Okay, so the next thing I wanted to do is if everyone can choose this interactive apps dropdown and then select the interactive desktop session. So we see that it brings up this it brings up a form. Within this form, we can select all of our resources that we'd like. So for the compute account, well, first of all, the desktop environment, right now we only have one available, the XFCE4. So you can just leave that selected. And then for compute account, you may have other compute accounts available, but today we can just use the open because everyone has access to the open account. Okay. And that's just a free compute account available to everyone. And then we can also choose our node type. So there's standard, basic, interactive, and high memory nodes. And I think I might, uh, yeah. So just for a breakdown of the different node types and what the differences are. So the basic nodes are just connected via Ethernet, and they're good for single node tasks. So if you're just going to be operating on one node, which typically through Portal sessions, you will typically be doing single node tasks. So basic nodes are totally fine for that. But then these standard nodes are connected additionally through InfiniBand. So that makes them very good for multi-node tasks because they're connected with each other through this higher bandwidth connection. So if multiple nodes have to talk to one another, standard node is probably the way you're going to want to go. If you're dealing with some memory intensive tasks like large data sets, the high memory nodes may be best. And then the interactive nodes are the last type that we have available, at least through that form for the open queue. Um, and they have GPUs on them, but the GPUs are specifically set up for graphics acceleration. So if you're doing some, like I mentioned console earlier, so if you're doing some type of 3D modeling where you actually, you have to drag around a 3D model and view it from different aspects, and it's kind of like a more uh, graphics based software, then you may want to use the interactive uh, node types. And I'll touch on this more tomorrow, but using this sinfo command that I provided here, if you use this command in a command line interface, it'll actually show you all the different, like how many nodes of each type are available and all the different attributes of each of the nodes. So let's go back to this form and um, continue on. So for the partition for the open account, the only partition available is open. But some of these, if you have access to a paid account, you may see other partitions available. Um, so, but we're just going to stick with open today. Next, you select the duration of your job. We can take this down to 2 hours because our session today is only for 2 hours. We're just going to select one node. So a node is a computer in itself. Okay. So essentially your laptop device could be considered a node. Now, if you would connect your laptop device to another laptop and have them working on the same computational problem, that would be using two nodes. Okay. Now, any node could have multiple cores on it. So, I mean, for today, I'm just going to use one node and one core, and then you can also alter this number of cores per task uh, if you want, but we'll just leave that set to one as well. And then for the amount of memory, I mean, I'll just select 8 GB today. Just so the reason why I'm selecting a low amount of resources is because if the more resources you request, the harder time Slurm is going to have finding a place to insert your job. So if you're requesting a minimal amount of resources, it'll be able to place your job relatively quickly. So after we select all of our resources, we can select launch, and it'll take us to this My Interactive Sessions list. So we see that this session here is queued right now. So while it's queued, I just kind of wanted to mention a note on the resource requests. So just to give you kind of an example of the amount of resources you may be curious in requesting. Um, so one laptop worth of resources, like let's just look at what a laptop worth of resources may be. So for instance, like um, not this current laptop, but my previous laptop had an 8-core processor and it had 32 gigabytes of RAM. Okay, so basically, if I could run a computational process on my laptop without completely crashing it, then there's no need to request more than this amount of resources. Okay. Um, and unless you're specifically coding up your script or your computational process so that it can take advantage of more cores or even more nodes, there's no reason to request more than you know that your process is enabled to to use. So like for instance, on my Mac here, if I do about this Mac, so we see that it has 36 gigabytes of memory here. And if I actually go to the system report, there we see, so this laptop that I'm on right now has 12 cores and 36 gigs. So it's similar to what I have on my slide for my previous work laptop. So we see here that this session now it turned green and it says it's running. And it actually, this number here in the title is the Slurm job ID. And then there's also this session ID here that both of these are useful for troubleshooting. Like if you're running into problems and you need to contact us, both of these ID numbers are good to provide. Okay. Now we can just click launch to get into the session, and you see it's just like a desktop session where I can point and click. So like I can open a terminal session here if I want. I can also just open like a file manager. So this is just like a graphical file manager. And as I promised earlier, we can do like a module avail command to see all the different software that's available on the system. So we see like there's a very extensive list. There's a lot of software available. So like let's use the module spider command to specifically look at what MATLAB is available. So we see that there are a lot of MATLAB versions available. Okay, so if I wanted to look at a specific version, I can just module show MATLAB, and then I can supply the specific version string. And then this module show command just shows the contents of this module file. So we see like there's just like some descriptive information here, but at the bottom, we see that there are these prepend path lines. So essentially, when I load this module file, all it's going to do is it's going to prepend this variable with the string that's supplied after it. So that's essentially how your environment gains access to MATLAB. When I run the module load command for this MATLAB module, it'll add this path to the front of the path variable. So then I'll be able to directly access whatever's in this bin folder. Okay. And in there will be the MATLAB executable. So I see there's a question in the chat. Whoops. It's a question about the MATLAB and why. Um, I'd say currently at this time there isn't a specific reason why we don't have multiple nodes. We're discussing about currently about all these different interactive apps for these different software packages. What what kind of resources should we allow the user to select and everything? Because of course, if you want a MATLAB session, with a certain number of nodes, you can do that through the command line, but it's kind of like it's we're trying to make design decisions about the graphical interface of the portal, how much customization should be available. Okay. Now, typically, um, I'd say like you should just use the portal for convenience. But if you're actually doing like multi-node processing or something that's more computationally involved, I'd say in those cases, it's probably a better use case to log in through a command line session and operate in that environment. But I mean, for your question about why we don't allow multiple nodes on MATLAB, it's just simply because it's not on the form right now, and it may become available in the future, or it may not. We're not exactly sure at this time. We are unable to download a software not on this available list. Um, so all this software on here is just listed by module avail is only software that is packaged by LMOD. Okay. So for instance, there here I have no modules loaded, but we see that like I have GCC available and I have Python available already. So like there is software that is available on the system. So I would call that the system software stack. And then I would call this like the LMOD stuff, the central software stack. And then you're free to install any software that you'd like on your own as well outside of this. So you can set up, for instance, like if you have some specific software package that you want access to, you can install it in your work directory. Like for instance, I mentioned that I personally install things in my work slash software directory. Um, yeah, so ArcGIS, I think, yeah, I mean, we have QGIS available just on the portal. But yeah, if you want that software, I'm not exactly sure if that's a licensed software or open source, but if you know, licensing kind of makes it complex, but if it's open source software, yeah, you can download it and install it yourself if you want. I mean, if you have a license for it, so you should, since it is a licensed software, if you have a license for it and you're licensed to place that in your user space on RC, then yes, you can install that. But I'd have to defer to ArcGIS to see what their limitations on their license is. But I'm pretty sure QGIS, I'm pretty sure that's open source. So, and we have that available here. Yeah, if you to install any software, that's one method of doing it is just if you want to come in here and open like a web browser from here and download files, you can do it that way. You can also, I mean, tomorrow I'll talk about the command line interface. I feel like that's probably a much better way to go about downloading and installing software. Um, and then actually later this in the semester, I actually have a specific training session for that's titled "Getting Your Software Up and Running." So I have that uh, training session scheduled for later on. In my last slide, in my slides, I actually have the date and time for that. So if you're specifically curious about setting up software and installing your own software, I encourage you to register for that session and attend. Yeah, so just specifically for that ArcGIS, I'd say if you're licensed for it, just reach out to ArcGIS and just clarify with them if you're good to use it on our system as just a single user, or if you have a group, like your whole research group, if you're all licensed for it, if you can place it in your group space. But again, I'm in no place to say what limitations their license has right now. Yeah, again, so one more thing I guess I wanted to mention. So if I go to this my interactive sessions list, we see that I have this session open. So there's this no VNC way to connect. So that we just did where it just pops open a new browser and it's directly through your web browser. But I can also do this native instructions. So if I choose this native instructions tab, it will actually launch uh, a window on my own device. So perhaps I can. So this in so I opened a terminal window. That's step number one. So I opened a terminal window. Step number two, I'm going to copy and paste this. But it says here, of course, I need to replace this SSH host with a valid HPC login server. So in this case, it's just going to be a submit node. So I can go over to my terminal session, blow this up a little bit. So I'm going to paste this, and then I'm going to use submit.hpc.psu.edu as the login host. Okay, so I created, so basically what that did right there is I created an SSH tunnel. So now I can run this command to establish. So, and we see now on another window, I can pull it over into my shared window here. So we see that this Turbo VNC window just opened up on my device. So we see like instead of operating through the browser, now it's like it's a native window on my device. Okay. So that's another way that you can access your session through the portal. Yeah, and I kind of already mentioned a lot of these other interactive apps that we have available, but I just maybe wanted to turn your attention to the RStudio app. So if we go to the RStudio server, so we see that for the environment selection, I mean, I can use a predefined environment and I can just select an R version here if I would like. Or, like, for instance, some people may prefer to install their own R version and all their R packages within a Conda environment, for instance. So in that case, if I want to access my R from a Conda environment, I can use the custom text field. So here in this case, like I know, so I can load this specific Anaconda module from our software stack. And then I know that this specific Conda environment I created, I have R within it and some R packages. So again, I can just select whatever resources I want. And since I'm loading Anaconda and I'm loading an environment that has R in it, and you have to heed this warning that R must be found in the path. So I know that I have R within the path of that Conda environment. I'm going to go ahead and launch this session. And then I'll show you what the R Studio app looks like once we jump into it. Oh, and perhaps another thing that I didn't mention before is that in this in these session cards, it also gives you like the host that you're connected to. So like that previous one, we were on this PSC 2339 was the compute node that we were connected to. And in the native instructions list, we see that again. And now on this one, we're on a different SC node. So I'll go ahead and connect to this app. So then we see that I'm just in a typical RStudio session here. And we see that the R version that I installed within this Conda environment is R3 4.3.1. And again, you only really need to use this used custom field dropdown if you're trying to load extra things into your environment. Now, if you just want a typical R session, you can also just choose the predefined environments and just select an R version directly from there. So today, I mean, I just gave you really a gentle introduction to the portal. Um, Again, it just provides this nice graphical interface through a web browser so that no matter what device you're connecting from, your interaction with our system will be the same regardless. Okay, and I showed you how to connect to the portal, and then I showed you that you're able to generate this shell access, so you're able to get to a submit node directly from there. So for instance, like if you're on a new, if you're most comfortable just in a command line session, but you're logging in from some device, some new device that you're unfamiliar with, perhaps, or it might be a Windows device where you don't have a great way of just like launching a command line interface, you can just connect to the portal and then get into a command line interface directly from the portal. Or, like I showed you, you can manage your files just directly in there, or you can connect to these interactive desktop sessions as well. Now, again, tomorrow's session, we're not going to focus on the portal. Instead, we're going to focus on operating within the command line environment. And I'll show you how to connect to a submit node and then launch both an interactive session and a batch session. I'll show you how to do both of those tomorrow. So as I mentioned, tomorrow's session is also at 10 a.m., just like today. And then later on this month, I guess it's actually next week, is this getting your software up and running on Ruriko Lab. So again, if you have specific software in mind that you want to install and you're not exactly sure about the best way to install it and manage your packages, I think this session will be really good for you. I'll show you a bunch of different tools that you can use to not only install your software, but then manage it long term and make sure your versions and everything and dependencies are all consistent. Um, Also, and then later in the semester here, in October, in a couple weeks, I'll give you one more like more in-depth training session about how to optimize your job. So once you have the basics down about connecting and manipulating your files on our system, then I'll show you how to like take it one step further and how to look at your computational process from a broader perspective. Um, and then I guess the last thing I wanted to mention is just that we have we do offer office hours via Zoom. We're doing it about at a weekly clip now. So definitely check out this events page. I linked it here on the top of this slide. We update this as we schedule new office hours and everything, and the Zoom link is available there so you can connect directly. You don't have to be there for the whole session. You can just pop in at any time during this session. And if you have any specific questions, we can address those there. Or if you just kind of like have a general workflow question or something, we can also help you in those sessions as well. And then also you can always contact us at icds@psu.edu if you have a specific problem you're running into. And we can work with you there. And again, if those office hours don't work for you, we can also just have a Zoom session, whenever you're available to to discuss your issue and kind of get you up and running. So thanks everybody for attending today, and I'm hoping to see you tomorrow